Okay, here we are today, and we're in Mosiah chapter 13. And just to recap, there was Abinadi had been asked a question about a scripture in Isaiah, which we'll not get to this time anyway. And then he asked his own question about, do you teach the law of Moses? And they said, yeah, we teach the law of Moses. And he says, well, how come you don't live it? And then he starts to talk about first, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and thou shalt not worship false idols, basically. And now when the king had heard these words, he said unto the priests, away with this fellow. He'd only quoted scripture. It's interesting. Away with this fellow, and slay him, for what do we have to do with him? For he is mad. Notice they're using all these things. Yesterday it was, not saying he's a prophet. He's madman. He's just a man. He's just, and they stood forth and tempted to lay their hands upon him, but he withstood them and said unto them, touch me not, for God shall smite you if ye lay your hands upon me, for I have not delivered the message which the Lord had sent me. That's the first thing he needs to do. Neither have I told you that which ye have requested that I should tell. Therefore God will not suffer that I shall be destroyed at this time. I find that really interesting. Two things. He wanted to answer their question because it's a good question, even though they're trying to catch him out. And second of all, he hadn't delivered the message he was supposed to give. And I'm just going to throw in a personal thing here. When I was a new missionary, hadn't been out in the field too long, my companion and I was invited into this house with these two people. They seemed really nice at first, and then as soon as we started talking about our message, they started railing on us and telling us that we were evil and that we would be going to hell, and I was given the first discussion about Joseph Smith and the first vision, and they were saying, well, he couldn't have had a vision of God the Father because he was evil. And we're saying, yeah, but he prayed, and when he prayed, they answered him, and they're saying, well, they couldn't because God would choose who to come to, and not them choose. And I'm going, well, yeah, they chose him, but they were not having it, and I could feel they were really, telling how evil we were. And they were missionaries for another church. You've probably seen this, the sort that just argue about everything, basically. And I was getting frustrated. And then my companion, who had been quiet at the time, then spoke up, and he didn't just do the discussion. All he did was bear his testimony. He says, I know that Joseph Smith saw God the Father and his Son Jesus Christ. He bore his testimony, and then turned to me, and I bore my testimony of Joseph Smith and of the Book of Mormon and of what I knew was true. And the Spirit poured in, and these two people could not say a word. Literally, their mouths were shut. And it might not be quite as dramatic as this, and I don't think our lives were on the line, but I could see what that power of God can do in moments like that. And so when we finished bearing our testimonies, we quickly said, oh, it's time to go. and left in there. As we're leaving, they said, "Oh, we maybe we should have another discussion some other times." We looked at each other and kind of like, no, this is not going to happen again. Anyway, that was a little side bit there, and how I can relate to Abinadi in a small sense. So then he says, so he goes on, he says, I must fulfill the commandments of God wherewith God commanded me. So it's important that we fulfill the commandments. And then it says that his face shone even as Moses's, and he spake with power and authority from God, and he continued his words, saying, I perceive that it cuts you to your heart, because I tell you the truth concerning your iniquities. And then he says something that I think is interesting. He says, it matters not whither I go, if it so be that I am saved. But this much I tell you, what you do with me after this shall be as a type and a shadow of things which are to come. There's the what if. Remember I said a couple of days ago, what if this happens? What if... this is a what if. What if King Noah said, oh, well, actually, why don't we come and untie you here, and let's get you cleaned up and everything, and I'll give you my best robes, and we'll sit down and have a nice meal together, and we'll sit there and talk and laugh and enjoy each other's company, and maybe I'll start doing the things you told me to do. Could you imagine what that'd be like, you know? I think he would have preferred that ending if he would have really thought about it, but he didn't. But that's a what if. I just think that's interesting. And then he said, and now I read unto you the remainder of the commandments of God, for I perceive ye they are not written on your hearts, and I perceive ye have studied and taught iniquity most part of your lives. I love the little note I'd written some time ago, and it says, are the commandments written on our hearts? What is it I study and teach? Are we writing the commandments on our heart? Are we studying those things that we should study? Are we spending more time on TikTok or Facebook or whatever? Is that what we're studying? And is that what we're teaching? So anyway, then he starts to talk about the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not make any graven images. He probably looks over at some of the artwork and things that they've got around there, that, because remember, they were idolatrous as well. And then we go on, and thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Thou shalt remember the Sabbath day. I'm just picturing him looking at different people like, hey, yeah, you know it. You know that this is what you're doing wrong. And then honor thy father and thy mother. Honor thy father and my mother. Probably looked at Noah and says, you know what your father would have said about what you're doing now? You know, he wouldn't be very pleased, would he? Thou shalt not kill. What are you trying to do to me? Thou shalt not commit adultery. As he looks over at the wives and concubines. Thou shalt not steal, as he looks at all of the fine ornamentation that they had taken from the people. Thou shalt not bear false witness, and kind of points at himself like, okay, you know, what do you think you're doing right now with me? And thou shalt not covet, as he looks at one of the people who's looking at the wives and concubines of King Noah. And you could just imagine him going through, and then just kind of, and then he asks the question, have ye taught this people that they should observe and do these things? for to keep those commandments? I say unto you, nay. For if ye had, the Lord would not have caused me to come forth and prophesy evil concerning this people. It is expedient that ye should keep the law of Moses as yet, he says. But now look what he does here. He says, moreover I say unto you that salvation doth not come by the law alone, and were it not for the atonement which God himself shall make for the sins and iniquities of his people, that they must unavoidably perish with notwithstanding the law of Moses. Now I say unto you, it was expedient that there should be a law given unto the children of Israel, yea, even a strict law, for they were stiff-necked people, and quick to do iniquity, and slow to remember their Lord their God. Therefore the law was given, and they were to observe strictly from day to day, and keep them in remembrance of God and their duty towards him. He's really teaching them a good thing. And all of these things are types of things to come. Now, did they understand the law? I say unto you, no, they did not understand the law. And this because of the hardness of their hearts, for they understood not that there could not any man be saved except it were through the redemption of God. They were so caught up in doing the law that they forgot. And I think we can do that today sometimes. Well, have you stayed away from coffee, tea, and tobacco? So worried about every little detail and of how we're living the law that we forget why we're living the law. And God should and did not Moses prophesy concerning the coming of Messiah, and that God should redeem his people? Yea, even all the prophets prophesied since the world began. And have they not said God himself should come down among the children? Now watch how, remember when I write in red or pink or whatever it looks like to you, but this is about God or Jesus Christ and the atonement. God should come down and see how much it changes into this. Should come down among the children of men and take upon him the form of man and go forth in mighty power upon the face of the earth. Yea, have they not said also that he should bring to pass the resurrection of the dead, that he himself should be oppressed and afflicted? What amazing power. I know that we've talked a lot, but I'm just going to dip into chapter 14. It's a short chapter. It's Isaiah. Yea, doth not Isaiah say, who hath believed our report? To whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? I find that interesting because are they believing his report? No. Can you imagine how it feels when he's saying these scriptures? Who has believed our report? Have you? No.